Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Studio Jake. I have a very special guest on with me today. I have Hilary Kennedy. You might know her from TheBlaze. She is a frequent guest on several of their shows, and she does their 4-Minute Buzz on Facebook. But you also might recognize her from all these celebrity interviews she's done. She's interviewed some UFC fighters. She was on Pinterest TV and on Youth Soccer TV. So I'm very excited to have her on today. Hilary, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jacob. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we're coming into a brand new year. We've got all kinds of exciting stuff happening in the world of entertainment, but also in sports. Now, I've not covered sports once except when the Astros won the World Series. I've got my hat in the corner there.
All right, Astros.
Yeah, I was super excited. Even when I lived in Dallas, I was an Astros fan. It drove the rest of my family crazy because when they would play each other, I was always in my Astros shirt while they were all in their Ranger gear. But anyway, I wanted to ask you because you covered the UFC a lot, and I would love to watch the UFC. Unfortunately, I don't have cable, so I only know like the headlines of what's going on in that kind of arena. So. No pun intended. So I'd like to get your perspective on this. Has the new season started, and who do you see coming up? As far as like titles go, and both men and women, who do you see kind of rising to the top as far as the UFC goes?
So I became a UFC fan relatively recently. I'd always loved boxing. My grandfather always liked to watch boxing when I was growing up. But I really got into watching MMA because I realized how amazing these fighters are. It's truly a sport where when you win, you have earned that win. There is no question. I mean, every once in a while there'll be a questionable call, but for the most part, when somebody wins, it's very clear how and why they won. So the big deal this month is Stipe Miocic. He is the heavyweight champion, and he is defending his heavyweight title for the third time. And if he wins, it'll make history because he'll be the first person who's defended his belt 3 times in one. But he's I wouldn't say he's a fan favorite in the sense that the UFC doesn't hype him up as much as they do some of their other fighters. But the general public, I think, loves Stipe because he is kind of a down-home guy. He works as a firefighter in his everyday job. He's not a big flashy fighter. He's not a big trash talker. He's just there to knock somebody out. He's just a great fighter and a great wrestler. So he's fighting a guy named Francis Ngannou, who is sort of the rising star, and everyone's got their money on Ngannou. And so even though Stipe is the heavyweight champion right now, they're considering him the underdog fighting Ngannou. So it's been kind of a weird thing because Stipe isn't necessarily getting the respect that he deserves by the UFC kind of positioning him as the underdog, even though he's the reigning champ. So it's going to be a really interesting fight. A lot of people are excited about this one because is it going to be the heavyweight champion, the nice guy against this new kid who's sort of the flashy, trash talking, dude with an attitude. So it'll be a good fight.
I'm sure we'll hear all about it as well. I know there are a ton. I always think it's funny because I'm not going to wander off too far in these weeds, but I've noticed that conservatives really like UFC. I know that Dana Lash, she always is live tweeting fights and stuff. So I always find that really interesting. But anyway, that's a side juncture we don't have to go down. But as far as women's UFC has really come up, and we've seen some incredible fights. We saw just all these amazing female athletes just come up from spectacular circumstances. And I know it's kind of cliche to mention this one, but definitely the Holly Holm and now I feel bad I can't remember her name, but the
girl was Ronda Rousey.
Ronda Rousey, Holly Holm.
Yeah.
No one saw that one coming, and so it's kind of funny because the WNBA and then women's soccer, not to sound too sexist here, but people kind of joke about that. Oh, who's really watching that? But not so with women's UFC. People pay attention to the women's UFC. And as far as that goes, who do you think is going to rise up in those ranks?
Man, I'm glad you mentioned Holly Holm. I love her. I was a big Ronda Rousey fan, as I think a lot of people were, and women especially, because Ronda kind of broke the mold in that she was a beautiful woman. She had a really fun, great personality, and she was fun to watch. But when Holly Holm defeated her, that was a huge upset. And Holly Holm has been a really interesting one to watch because she's lost her last two fights, one of which was a little questionable. She fought a fighter named Durandamy, and there were some questionable calls there. I personally think Holly Holm should have won, but she's lost her last two fights, but she is an incredible fighter and she fights until the end. So in this last UFC, a couple of weeks ago, she fought a female fighter that's a reigning champion that I don't think has ever lost a match. She goes by the name of Cyborg.
You're right. Yeah.
And nobody wants to fight Cyborg. They're all terrified of her because, I mean, even if you look at her, she is a fierce looking chick. And so I think that it was a great fight, though, because Holly showed that she isn't afraid of anybody. She's willing to train and go the distance. And the awesome thing about that is they were the highest paid athletes on that evening's card, which is really cool for women in the UFC, just seeing that, hey, the UFC respects what we do. They're going to pay us accordingly. And I think as time goes on, we're going to see them getting paid even bigger and bigger purses. So
that's pretty amazing. And, even because I have a karate background, which I know is totally different than MMA, but even when I was active in martial arts, and now to be clear, I was not an MMA fighter. I was strictly a striking fighter. I would be laid out by any of these amazing athletes. But even doing karate and taekwondo and kickboxing and whatnot, it's one of the few sports, I think, as far as fighting goes, where men and women can be equal, depending on the type of fight. I mean, it obviously depends on the situation, but I think that that is really fantastic, especially because after the Holly Holm, when she beat Ronda Rousey, I actually kind of followed her career for a little bit. Like I said, I don't have cable, so I wasn't really able to stick with it as far as watching the fights.
Yeah,
because if you're just reading stats, it gets boring really fast. But watching those amazing fights with her and with Cyborg, I did catch a little bit of that fight. That was an amazing fight.
It was really, really cool because I think a lot of people expected Holly to fold much earlier, but she went the distance, and she was definitely. She definitely looked bad when it was over. I mean, she took some major licks, but it was kind of funny. I follow Holly on Instagram, and just a few days later, she was back at home in New Mexico teaching her boxing classes, and she just gets right back to work. And you can tell she really has a passion for it and loves it. And so I think that's cool. She's an inspiration for a lot of women that maybe either are looking to get into the sport or people like me that just love to watch the women fight. I think their fights are every bit and sometimes more so exciting than watching the men fight. So it's cool.
It's very cool. Now we're going to switch topics a little bit. Now we've got 28, as amazing as 2016 and 2017 were as far as movie goes. We had, especially last year, we had some pretty amazing films. We had Wonder Woman, we had Dunkirk, we had Baby Driver, and Spider-Man Homecoming. Amazing, fantastic films. And even we actually had, everyone was a little surprised by this, but we actually had, everyone picks on Christian films, but we actually had a good Christian film in the form of The Case for Christ with Mike Vogel.
I love that movie.
I know, it came out of nowhere. Everyone, I'm one of the few people that give Christian films the benefit of the doubt. I'm constantly made fun of at the Daily Wire for this, but Case for Christ, there's no way you can make a case that movie was saccharine. But now we're coming into 2018, and we've got a whole bunch of new movies. In fact, I think The Commuter with Liam Neeson, it just opened this weekend, and
it looks good.
It does look good. I think he's kind of found his niche and kind of these suspense action films. But what are some movies that you are looking forward to that you saw the trailer or maybe just read about and you're like, yes, that's where I want to go?
One that I think you and I have in common that we're both looking forward to is the 1517 to Paris.
Yes.
I think this film is going to be really interesting since the main actors are playing themselves. They were the real heroes, and so they're playing themselves in the film. And that's a huge gamble that Clint Eastwood took on, taking non-actors and letting them sort of, I know it's not a huge stretch because they're playing themselves, but still,
Right.
it's a whole other world for these guys. And so I think it's going to be interesting not only to see, does Clint Eastwood still have it? I mean, he's been directing for a very long time. I was reading that, I don't know if he's 87, but he's somewhere in his 80s, and that's incredible to still be directing that long. So I want to see, like, does he still have that sort of spark and fire when he's making these films and making them suspenseful, but also, how are these guys going to do portraying what happened to them in real life? What do you think?
I think it's going to be really good. I've not, now, granted, I haven't seen all of his directed films, but I haven't seen a film directed by Clint Eastwood that I did not enjoy. I even went back and watched Play Misty for Me, which was his first it was his directorial debut in that film.
Wow.
Man, it kept me on the edge of my seat. And it was a suspense thriller, kind of like an early one of the stalker horror films.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really am. And of course, I love military films. My dad practically raised me on them. So I think it's going to be good. And I did hear, as far as like the people playing themselves, I heard a director, I can't remember who it was. I want to say it was, I can't remember. I don't want to put words in someone's mouth, but he said that there are no bad actors. There's only bad directors. And I guess we'll see. Sometimes I think that guy got proven wrong, but that's definitely, I think as far as Clint Eastwood goes, I think we'll see something really epic from that film.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
speaking of military films, we've got 12 Strong coming out with Chris Hemsworth and Christian Toto. He didn't give it like of Hollywood and Toto. He didn't give it like a full-on review, but he definitely released a post saying, "Go see this film." Have you? What do you think about that one? 12 Strong, about the Afghan troops who were the U.S. military troops sent into Afghanistan to kind of get the lay of the land before the war actually started.
Right, like right after 9/11. I've heard
Right.
nothing but good things about this film. I've heard it's beautifully acted, that it's beautifully shot, that it's really well directed. So I'm excited to see this one. I think it's going to be action from start to finish. And it's always great to see a movie that just sparks that patriotism in you again, because I feel like there's been so much negative talk about our country and what we stand for. And so it's nice to see a film where you have this sort of renewed faith that we still have people that fight for our freedoms every day, who are really willing to put it all on the line. And I love to see that represented, that we do still have these real American heroes. So I think this is going to be a good one.
I think so too. And Chris Hemsworth is a fantastic actor. I even saw a bad film that he was in, and he was good in it. The rest of the film was terrible, but he was good in it. So
he is great.
Yeah, I know I almost feel sorry for him being in Thor: Dark World, because that was such a terrible movie, but he was really good in it as Thor. Now, moving on, what's that will be good because of its director, I think, but Ready Player One, that's on my list of films I'm looking forward to. That's the one about the boy who he's in the future, and the internet has been replaced by the Oasis, where you can actually go into this virtual reality world similar to Sword Art Online, for all my anime fans. And but then he unlocks this key. And if you find these 3 Easter egg keys, you get a treasure. You get this, the guy who created Oasis, you get his fortune, and it's worth like $1 trillion or something. But I read some of the novel. I wasn't too impressed with the novel, but I do think the film looks interesting. What do you think?
So this is one that I didn't know very much about and hadn't heard much about. But what interests me about it is it seems like it's almost like a modern day treasure hunt. Because I just read a lot of books when I was a kid about treasure hunting and unlocking these things, like the movie Goonies. If you've ever seen Goonies, it kind of reminded me of that premise, and that you're searching for something and going on these quests. And so I think that's going to be one that I will go see, that I maybe wouldn't have considered if I hadn't heard that you liked it.
And like I said, I'm hoping that this is a case where the movie is better than the book, because I have so many nerd friends who are like, "You got to read Ready Player One. It's such a good book. I wasn't able to put it down." I was like,
Not that
sorry, it's
great, but
just
okay.
not that great. But the movie does look good, and with Steven Spielberg at the helm, I think it'll be good. But now, are you by any chance a superhero movie fan?
I do like a lot of superhero movies. The Spider-Man Homecoming was awesome, and I loved it. Um, but I'm sure you probably have some good recommendations too for what you want to see. I am excited about Black Panther. I think that's
Yes.
going to be an epic film. I love Forrest Whitaker. I love Michael B. Jordan. I love Angela Bassett. They're all fantastic. And then I actually interviewed Chadwick Boseman, and I adored him. He was kind of a serious guy. I was a little, I don't know, you can tell he's a deep thinker, just a little more serious in the way that maybe like Natalie Portman is in her interviews too. Just you
Mhm.
can tell they're just very chill, but they've got a lot going on inside. But I played a little game with him and quizzed him on, M&Ms or Snickers or, Skittles or Starburst, just to get him warmed up. And he ended up being a lot of fun to talk to, and had a theater background and just kind of always knew he wanted to be a performer. So I think he's someone who takes his craft very seriously and is going to kill in this role.
And my only concern is the trailers. Marvel has this bad habit of giving away too much in the trailers, which they
Mm-hmm.
learned that from DC, because DC is real bad about that. But I do think it's going to be good. But I'm just concerned, especially the third trailer they released. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, did you give away too much in that trailer? But I heard a comic book resources did a video on Black Panther about how excited they are, and they're saying, oh, no, don't think that. They did not do this. They're just showing off their visual effects. It's not giving away anything in the movie. So now I'm a little bit more
It's like,
hopeful.
let's
And
hope so.
also,
Let's hope they're not putting
yeah,
everything out on
exactly.
the table before we all see it.
Exactly, because it's a lineup of great actors, and Ryan Coogler is the director and he of course did Creed, which I was prepared
Mm-hmm.
to hate Creed because I'm such a big Rocky fan, but I actually walked out of Creed and I went, wow, that was a fantastic movie. So yeah, I'm
And Michael
looking.
B. Jordan was Michael B. Jordan in that also?
Yes, he played Creed,
Okay, that's what I thought.
Adonis.
Okay,
And then of
okay,
course we got Aquaman coming out this year. I am not
yeah,
an Aquaman fan. I've never bought an Aquaman comic book. I've only known him from the Justice League television show. So, but which you can read my review on my blog. I thought the movie was good, but I think it was epic. Like, it didn't have that epic quality that the first Avengers had, but it succeeded
right.
in making Aquaman cool again. So so I'm actually am looking forward to that. And also Jason Momoa, he nailed the part in Justice League. So I don't know. Did you see Justice League?
I did. I liked it. I mean, again, since I'm not a huge comic book lover, I mean, I like the films. I didn't grow up reading comic books, um, but I think that's what I like about the films is that most of them, I will say, I've seen some that I was like, eh, but most of them, I love that even if you're someone like me that doesn't follow comic book culture, you didn't grow up reading them, you haven't seen all the films or the reincarnations of the characters, you can still follow along, enjoy the movie, and you leave having had a great experience.
Yeah, and I think that's what Aquaman is going to be for this year. And I think that we'll see. And I can't wait for the trailer to drop. The trailer has not dropped yet, but I honestly think it's going to be a good film. And along with now, this one we probably we don't know enough about really to dwell on it. But Ant-Man and the Wasp is another great superhero film that I think is going to be good. It's got Evangeline Lilly and Paul Rudd, who of course had fantastic chemistry in the first Ant-Man.
Yep.
So hopefully we'll see some good stuff for that one.
All right. Well, I will make the time to go see some of your recommendations, but I'm going to request that you take time to go see the second Mamma Mia movie, the Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again.
Well, I'll have to watch the first one first. I haven't seen the original Mamma Mia.
Yeah, you'll have to, and it is a musical, so people tend to either, love or hate musicals. I like them. I'm not a musical theater person. I'm not a singer, but I enjoy them, and I really liked the first one. It's a really fun movie, and this new one, the only concern I have about it is that I don't see Meryl Streep in any of it, and she was kind of the big draw for me to go see the first one. So they kind of allude in the trailer that maybe she's died, and the woman playing Meryl Streep's mother is Cher, which is kind of a big deal for people who love musicals and love music. And so Cher is going to be in the film, which is cool, but I'm a little concerned that Meryl Streep is not going to be part of it at all, which will take away some of the draw and some of the magic for people like me that are actually going to see it for the acting a little more than the music.
I actually do like musicals, and I'm secure enough in my manhood to admit that. I especially like, well, if you watch, like, especially like Singing in the Rain, like that's actually it's not a girly movie. So
No.
every time a dude tells me that, I'm like, dude, watch Singing in the Rain or watch White Christmas. You know, White Christmas takes place after World War II. So I will. All right, folks, you heard it here first. Hillary Kennedy has convinced me to see Mamma Mia, something I never thought someone would be able to do. So I will check out Mamma Mia, and then I will write a review on it. I'll do a movie review flashback on my blog, and then I will go see Here We Go Again, which is, of course, the sequel. Now, on to a more serious film. We've got Chappaquiddick coming out, which is, of course, about this scandal surrounding Ted Kennedy when he left a poor woman to die in his car in a lake. Or pond or whatever it was, but or lake. I guess it was a lake, Lake Chappaquiddick. So from the trailer, it doesn't look like they're cutting Teddy any slack. It looks like they're actually going to at least say yes, he is somewhat responsible for this. And I was a little surprised by that because I was expecting the trailer to be like, "Oh, poor Ted Kennedy" and all this, but it actually looks like no, they're going to give him kind of a rough time with this.
That's going to be really interesting. I feel like movies tend to, as I have the last name Kennedy also, but movies tend to glamorize the Kennedys for the most part. Not all of them, but I think a lot of them do. So it'll be interesting if they portray him as more of a callous person than, oh, this was just some sort of accident, he's a victim. So it'll be interesting to see how they write it and what the family thinks or if they see it.
And you're right, because it's what were they called? The Reels channel did that miniseries, The Kennedys. I didn't see the sequel, which had Matthew Perry playing Ted Kennedy. I can't remember who's playing Ted Kennedy in Chappaquiddick, but that film glamorized Bobby Kennedy, or that miniseries glamorized Bobby Kennedy, which I thought was kind of interesting because even films where they kind of tell the truth about JFK, about his affairs and everything, they still want to try to, make him like he's still like a good old boy. But they didn't do that with the Reels miniseries, but they did do that with Bobby. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Obviously, that person thought Bobby should have been president, and he probably would have had he not come to a tragic end. Yep. So any other films you want to throw my way?
Yeah, so I have one that people don't really know a lot about just because they haven't been releasing a lot of information about it. But Holmes and Watson with Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly playing Sherlock Holmes and Watson. And it's going to be their comedic take on that story. Because, I mean, if you think how many like reboots of Sherlock Holmes we've seen on TV and in films. And so I think it's going to be really funny. They've been shooting in London, I think they're still in production over in London. So there's been a couple of stills that we've seen from them on set. But other than that, we don't really know a whole lot about the film or who else is in it. So I'm kind of excited about that one because it'll be nice to see them back together again. I think it'll probably be pretty hilarious.
I am a Sherlockian. I have read all of Sherlock Holmes's stories, and even ones that they're not sure if Conan Doyle actually wrote them, because some came out after his death that the Strand claimed, oh yeah, he definitely wrote them, but no one's really sure.
Yeah.
But I actually have read those as well. I think most of them he probably did write, but anyway, I won't get into that. So I'm always leery of parodies because I'm just such a hardcore Sherlock Holmes fan. In fact, the only parody that I've enjoyed so far was Sherlock Holmes, the VeggieTales, Sherlock Holmes and the Golden Ruler. So
That's awesome.
yeah, I
Well,
always
maybe this one will surprise you, or you might go, "Oh my gosh, why did they do this?"
and who plays Watson? You said his name. Who was it?
John C. Riley. So he
Okay,
and Will
John C.
Ferrell
Riley.
did the movie Step Brothers together.
Right.
So he's the guy with the curly hair.
And right, I've not seen that film, but they both are funny guys. So if anyone could pull off a parody of that epic proportion, it would be the two of them.
Yeah, so I'm hoping, I've got my fingers crossed that it will be as funny as it could be. But again, we've seen some films that had a lot of comedic hype behind it and were huge flops. So it could kind of go either way.
Yeah, I saw what was it called? The House with Will Ferrell and Amy Poehler.
Yes. So the trailer
And
looked
I
really
did,
good, but I heard
yes,
the film was not so great.
that is the case. I didn't even write a review about it because I was afraid people would think I was being too cynical. But I will say Will Ferrell and Amy Poehler had really good chemistry, but I don't
Mhm.
think the director knew how to channel their comedic energy. I think that's where it kind of fell apart. There were like funny laugh out loud moments, but not but the movie itself wasn't a huge laugh fest.
Right.
So the funniest part was when you see it in the trailer, so I'm not giving it away, but the funniest part was when they cut off the guy's finger, the who's cheating, he's card counting, and so they bring
Yes.
him below, and they're trying to accidentally. Will Ferrell accidentally cuts off his finger. That part actually was the funniest part of the film. So,
They put it all
but anyway,
it did. I mean, it seemed like it was going to be hilarious through the trailer, but sometimes that is the disappointment where you've seen all the funniest bits before you ever actually even get to the movie.
exactly. Exactly. So I got to throw out a final film, and then I'll let you throw out a final film if you want. But I've got to throw out Avengers: Infinity War.
Okay.
This is every nerd's dream come true. You've got the lineup of the original Avengers and the West Coast Avengers fighting Thanos. They've been building up to Thanos since the first Avengers film. So I think that a few people are a little worried because I know I'm in the minority. I loved Captain America Civil War and I loved Age of Ultron. Some of my friends are like, you liked Age of Ultron? Ugh. But I'm like, no, I thought it was great. So I think that, or I should say good, because you have to be careful when you say great around movie buffs. But
Right.
it was, I thought they were great films. So I think that this whole lead up to Thanos and it's finally coming together. This is what we've been waiting for from the MCU. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I'm going to toss it. I'm going to toss it to you. You say you're not really a comic book person, but you've seen some of the films and you enjoy them. You just in that vein? What did you think when if you've have you seen the trailer by any
I
chance?
I don't think I've seen the trailer for this one.
Oh man, I don't know what that totally destroyed my question. But
But well,
anyway,
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna say I do remember hearing, and maybe this is about something else, but I do remember hearing some chitter chatter about Captain America being dead, and there's fear that he is dead because they saw Chris Evans, they saw some stills from the film shoot, and he either had a different hairstyle or he didn't have a beard. I can't remember what it was, but people
He
were
had a
like,
full
"Oh no."
beard.
That's what it was. So I know people have been really up in arms and kind of worried that like he won't be coming back and he's so fantastic as Captain America. So that's kind of the buzz that I've been hearing about that. That's pretty much the extent of my knowledge. But
Well, Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth, their contracts are up. So if they're not even technically supposed to be in part two because this movie is two parts. They're technically not supposed to be part two. Part one, Robert Downey Jr. got an extension because he actually wanted to be in Spider-Man: Homecoming, and they said, okay, well that means you have to be in Avengers: Infinity War Part Two. So we're going to extend you if you want to be in Homecoming and he agreed to that. So, but anyway, as far as that goes, I'm actually pretty excited. I think we will see Thor and Captain America meet their end in Infinity War, at least in part two. But I could be wrong. But I have a feeling Black Panther and Doctor Strange are going to step up as the new leaders of the Avengers. But we'll have to wait and see.
right.
All right, I'm going to toss it back to you. You got a final film you want to throw
I'm
out?
trying to think if there was something else. I think we covered most of mine that I'm excited about. I think the 1517 to Paris is going to be the top of my list, and then Mamma Mia is just a feel good that I want to see. But you've given me a lot of films that, especially looking at your blog, like you list a lot of films that I was going, hey, I've never heard of this, or I haven't seen this trailer, because you cover a lot of genres that either I don't see the trailers for very often, or I just didn't follow the books or the comic heroes. So I'm excited to see some of the ones that you recommend, because you have a good comprehensive list on your blog.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. What I did was, at the end of the year of 2017, I just sat down one Saturday and all I did was watch movie trailers for all of 2018. I drove my wife crazy. She was like, "Are you still watching movie trailers?" And I was like, "Yep." So I just want to know what's coming up. I just got to know.
Yeah, it's a
So
fun way to get
yeah,
excited about them.
exactly. And I like Lara Croft was one that I wasn't expecting. I think I put it in my honorable mentions, not in my top 10, but my honorable mentions. That's actually one that does look pretty good. Lara Croft Tomb Raider. All right, so on to a little bit of a tragedy. So Ben Affleck has been caught up in the Weinstein effect. He was deny. I don't know anything about Weinstein. A girl accused him and he apologized and he said, "I don't remember it that way, but I'm sorry if that's what happened." And then that video dropped of him like pawing that French Canadian television host. Although from the video, it didn't look like she was suffering too much. It kind of looked like she was having a good time,
Good time.
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me. But just, it was a bad time for that video to resurface.
Yes.
And so he has officially parted ways with Warner Brothers. He was supposed to have a cameo in Suicide Squad 2. That's not happening. And now there's a lot of buzz about who will replace him as Batman.
Yep.
As far as him departing, do you think that was right? Warner Brothers said, "Yeah, maybe you're giving us a lot of bad press. Maybe you should just walk out after Justice League." Do you think that was the right thing to do, or do you think that they should have waited till? Because now it seems like Matt Damon is kind of in the crosshairs, not Ben Affleck anymore. But as far as that goes, what do you think of that whole thing of them just saying, "See you later. Don't let the door hit you on the way out"?
I think they were already looking for a way to dispose of him and move him out of the way, out of the franchise. I know he said at Comic-Con last year, "No, I'm going to be back. I still would like to do one more." And then in November, he kind of backtracked a little bit and said, "Well, we'll see." And so I think they were always waiting to find a way, because he just hasn't delivered in this role. And so I think they've lost so much money that I think maybe they were already looking for, how do we gracefully make his exit? And so when all of this popped up, it was really more of an opportunity for them to go, well, not only can we get rid of him, but we kind of look like the good guys by saying, like, we're standing up for women everywhere. So it's unfortunate that he just didn't deliver in this role the way that they expected. But, he's many movies. This just he was just painful to watch as Batman, in my opinion. I
agree with you.
I just didn't ever connect with him in that role at all.
And I know that this is going to sound incredibly nerdy, but the type of Batman he played, there's a writer named Frank Miller, and he wrote Batman that way, the way Ben Affleck was portraying him, because they kind of got more of the mainstream Batman with Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, and Christian Bale, and Kevin Conroy. I refuse to mention GC, but the other guys, they got more of the mainstream, what people think of as the mainstream Batman. And so here he comes along, and he's playing him as the Frank Miller, they call that version of Batman the Darker Knight. And so I think I'm a fan of some of those stories, because it really took Batman in a different direction. But I think it's a very small portion of even Batman fans who think, "Oh, that's the real Batman." So as far as connecting, it wasn't just with the audience, it was also with Batman fans. And as we know, Warner Brothers And well, no, actually, Marvel's actually kind of good at this, but Warner Brothers is kind of terrible at listening to the fans with what they want. But anyway, off the top of your head, who do you think will likely step into the role? Or do you,
The
or
last
just
Well, the last that I heard, Jake Gyllenhaal was really the front runner, which I think is a good decision, actually. I
Mhm.
think he's a strong actor. He's extremely
Yeah.
likable. He can be funny, but he can be serious. And people just tend to like him in almost every role that he takes. So I think he could be a really great choice. I read your blog post about some of the people that you think would make a great replacement. And I have to say, bringing back Christian Bale, not a bad idea. I really liked him in that role. I think he is a fascinating guy, both just in real life and on screen. And he did the role justice. I thought he was great. And then you mentioned a lot of people that I wouldn't have considered, like Stephen Baldwin. I thought that was a really interesting choice. So tell me why you picked that.
Well, I picked Stephen Baldwin because he's one of the most underrated of the Baldwin brothers.
Mhm,
Alec and William, kind of, and what's the other one? Alex, right?
mhm.
There's four of them.
Yep.
They always get all the press, and I feel like Stephen Baldwin, who I've seen act in a lot of B movies, and I really think that's because he's such an outspoken Christian, so he
Right.
can only get kind of B movie roles. But I think he's kind of underrated as far as the Baldwin brothers go. I think he would do really good at the part. He would kind of bring like a driven uh, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Driven character to that part. So that's
Yeah.
why I put him on the list.
I love that. I thought, it was someone who I thought I would never have considered him, but he does have like the intensity and the charm
Right.
to be great in that role. So I thought that was a cool choice. But if I had to guess, I would say, Jake Gyllenhaal would be a real obvious choice for
Mhm.
Warner Brothers to go with.
And I made on that list you mentioned, I made Brett Dalton number one, who of course people know him as Agent Ward from Agents of Shield.
Yep.
And one of the reasons I made him number one, and because I was actually debating whether him or Carl Urban, and Carl Urban got demoted to two, but Carl Urban is in talks to return as Dredd, and so I'm kind of like, oh, he was such a good Judge Dredd. I would hate for that to spoil that, but I think that one of the reasons I picked Brett Dalton is because he has that really way to play kind of a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a person with a dark side, and you saw
Hmm.
that in Agents of Shield, and so that's one reason. And actors have jumped over. Josh Brolin, he jumped from Avengers to X-Men. Uh, what's his name? The original actor for Cyclops. I can't think of his name. But anyway, the original Cyclops from X-Men, he appeared in Superman Returns, which was a terrible movie. But anyway, these actors have hopped back and forth before, so I could see Brett Dalton do it. And of course, I mentioned Mike Vogel if they wanted to stick with kind of a veteran Batman.
Yep.
I mentioned not Alec Baldwin, Adam Baldwin, who's not a Baldwin brother.
You
Um,
also mentioned Army Hammer, which I thought was a
yes,
great choice too. I think I can completely see him playing that role,
he
because
actually it
he
was
also.
almost. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say he also has that kind of intensity and that charm, and he's proven that he can play some meteor roles really well.
And he was actually up to replace Christian Bale because originally the DCU was going to start with the Justice League and spin everyone off. They were going to do kind of the reverse Avengers thing,
Hmm.
but then that movie got canceled because it was just too expensive to make, and also because of the writer's strike that happened right before The Dark Knight Rises came out. So that movie kind of went away. But he was their choice to play Batman in that film.
How
Um,
interesting. Well, I
yeah, it's called Just Mortals. But do you have someone who is not on my list? Is there a name you would like to throw out?
ooh man, somebody who's not on your list to play. Hmm, this is tough. I'm trying to think of
It
the
is
I
tough.
well, and truly, like in my mind, I always think of Christian Bale because
Right.
he was probably the first Batman I remember seeing. So I think my heart just always gravitates towards him. But I um got the chance to interview him last year,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
you hear all these stories about him being very intense to work with, and that he's, you know, got a little bit of a temper or whatever. But he was actually a very, very kind, very nice
Mhm.
guy, and also very funny, loved to laugh, had a great personality. And so I just, when I think of Batman, I always think of him. But I'm sure as soon as we finish talking, I'll go in my other living room and I'll think, oh, there's like 5 guys that I know would be perfect as Batman. But I also, I mean, we're living in the age of reboots, right? Where we see
Right.
people coming back and reprising their roles, just like them bringing back the TV show Roseanne, or,
Mhm.
you know, everybody pushing to do a reboot of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And so it would be kind of nice to see one of the earlier Batmans come back and reprise that role. I think that could be cool.
There is a rumor going around because they already want to reboot the DCEU, so they're thinking about doing the Flashpoint storyline where goes back in time and accidentally causes a bunch of chaos. So then he has to rewrite it, all this stuff. So there's a rumor going around that they won't reveal the new Batman until Flashpoint. He'll be at the end of the movie.
Oh, wow.
Because at the end of Flashpoint, the story, when Flash fixes everything, it ends with him visiting Batman and explaining what happened and whatnot. And so they think, so there's a rumor going around that when Flashpoint comes out, that's how it's going to end, is they're going to do the big reveal of who the Batman is.
Oh,
So that would be
cool.
interesting.
That would
But
be.
anyway, we've come to the end. Hilary, it's been so good having you on. You've been an amazing guest. Is there any final thoughts you want to throw out on any of the topics we've touched on today?
I just want to encourage everyone to get out there and become a UFC fan. And
100%.
I've just had so much fun. Thanks so much for having me on. This has been a great time. And now I've got a list of movies I've got to go see.
And where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. It's just at Hilary, Hilary, Kennedy, Kennedy. And then I have a style and fashion blog if people are interested in clothes. And that's just HilaryKennedy.com.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for watching. Of course, you can find me on Twitter at RealJacob. You can find my blog, jacobairy.blog. And of course, be sure to like and subscribe and tell your friends about Studio Jake. We have amazing guests like Hilary Kennedy, and it's always something nerdy going on if you're a first-time guest and you're like, what the heck just happened? It's like we're like the nerd Twilight Zone here. So, Hilary, thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Jacob.